Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. I'm your host, Chad Madden. This week, I wanted to share with you a recording from a recent webinar that I hosted. To get access to the slides and videos of this recording, you can visit getbreakthrough.com/resources. Remember, this was a training hosted with a live audience, so there are real-time questions and answers that I think you will find valuable. Without further ado, let's get started. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For everybody that's on the webinar, I'm going to assume that you're a practice owner and you're just like every other practice owner right now, struggling with declining reimbursements and ultimately declining profit margins. So we're going to talk about solutions and how to solve that and what's working in the trenches today. So quick poll to get started here, break the ice. Are you selling cash pay services today? So up on your screen, there is a poll. We'll read the answers out loud, the results of the poll here in a second. So are you selling cash services today? No. Yes, LightForce Laser. Yes, Shockwave. Yes, radial pressure wave. Yes, traction, spinal decompression. Yes, you're completely cash or out of network. And yes, something else. And you can write that in the chat. Awesome. So, a lot of responders. 18% yes, LightForce. 17% no. We have some shockwave in there, the radial pressure wave, also spinal decompression together. That's about 20%. Yes, I'm mainly cash pay. That's 7%. And then yes, something else that is written in the chat. Thanks everybody for responding. And then this one, you're going to respond in the chat as well. And Andrea will help us out here. But what's the number one reason that you want to increase cash sales or cash revenue? While you're doing that, I'll spout off the top of my head. Apparently, there's something funny in the chat. But yeah, for literally with our directors here in private practice, we're looking at, where's the revenue going? Things like Shockwave, LightForce, decompression that can easily and readily implement into our patient flow. We can earn essentially $240 an hour with cash pay services, or we can get paid on average $88 an hour if we're only insurance. So we have many people that are looking to, get a raise or keep up with inflation in terms of our employees, lots of requests coming through for more pay, and really cash pay services, serving that person better who's coming through, getting them better results is a nice win-win all around. So it looks like there's quite a few answers in the chat. Andrea, if you want to read some of those, that'd be great.
Sure. The first one was to stay in business, which is very valid. Reinvest in the business. Dealing with insurance is a pain. So other people have been voicing that one as well. Avoid insurance. Increase revenue in general.
Thanks, everybody. So you're in the right place right now. If the rising cost of doing business, as many of you mentioned already, it's making it increasingly difficult for your practice to be profitable and keep your doors open. You want to fill your schedules and space consistently. You want a differentiator between you and other practices, competitors in your area, so that you can stand out from the competition. You want to attract patients willing to pay cash. We're going to cover that. And also, you're considering adding a cash-based service, or you're selling cash-based services today. So in our time here together, we're going to talk through why it's important to add cash-based service. And if you already know personally yourself where it's important is getting the rest of your team on board as well, understanding that why really well so you can get them on board. Common barriers to generating a revenue from cash services. Mark and I have been talking with Andrea. Lots of data here. We'll at least cover the top three most common ones that we hear. 3 strategies to combat that and increase revenue with cash pay services. Then we're going to again announce a new program for growing cash revenue, and we should have time here to answer your questions at the end. So, why should we add a cash-based service? Well, this is the Medicare conversion factor from 2016 through 2023. As many of you know, there was another proposal that came out July 13th. 2 weeks ago, on September 11th, was the deadline to get in comments for the proposed changes. It's another 3.3 to 3.6% decrease in the conversion factor. Now, if that conversion factor goes through, the proposal goes through on the physician fee schedule, and that essentially affects us in primarily in physical therapy, or at least that's what I know the most. But if that goes through in 2024, the conversion factor, which is not adjusted for inflation in any way, will actually be lower than what it was in 1994. The problem is that if you look at inflation, and the dollar in 1994 is versus today. Today, the dollar is worth less than half of what it was in 1994. So the problem again is if we were reimbursed for a Medicare visit for $82 in 1994, in 2024 next year, we're actually forecasted to get less than $82, and our costs have gone up dramatically. So the cost of space, cost to do business, employment costs, et cetera, have gone up dramatically. They've more than doubled during that time. So many segments, of healthcare are seeing decreased reimbursements. It's not exclusive to those in physical therapy or chiropractic care or physicians. It's pretty much across the board. It's no longer smart or best business practice to rely completely on insurance-based revenue. That would be 100%, insurance-based revenue. We have the increased employment expenses and other costs that come with, inflation more than doubling the cost to stay open over the last 30 years. And in the end, for many of us, that means shrinking profits. And for many of us, so Carl and I were talking about this, Mark and I as well. But in the last 6 months, I haven't had a single one-on-one conversation with an owner who hasn't brought up declining profitability. Like it is systemic. It's universal right now. And again, the goal for us here is during this session is to give you best practices in terms of what owners are doing to successfully combat that right now. So in that pro forma tool, there's something along the lines of 3 scenarios, but this is for a hypothetical practice that you can see my assumptions here at the bottom: 2,000 square feet, operating with 2 clinicians, receiving $90 a visit in insurance, and they're running at 80% capacity. In this case, would be full capacity would be 100 visits a week. This would be roughly 80 visits a week. So,
Chad, didn't you mention to me in a conversation that some of the folks that were seeing their numbers drop, that their solution was they were just going to take less, pull for themselves on their profit?
Yeah, Mark, we've heard, I'm going to pay myself less or not take a paycheck, or even worse, I'm going to subsidize out of my own personal, my personal savings, my personal checkings. I'm going to pay to keep the business open. So yeah, I've heard some various ones that they were the most alarming, that, I'm literally not going to take pay, or I'm going to pay to keep the practice open.
And our hope is after today that will, if that thought is in the back of your mind, we're going to wash that away and give you some different strategies on how to get numbers to go north without having to do that, because that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, from experience, it's very slippery and tough to climb out of. Exactly right, Mark. So thanks for bringing that up. So 3 scenarios. We have the status quo practice that, does not have cash-based service, does not maximize their utilization of space. If they did nothing more than add a cash-based service, and I went with very modest assumptions here, 10% of patients who come through, so 34 new patients in a month, 3 of them buy a $400 cash pay package. And with the treatment technologies that we're talking about, that would be an extra $1,200 a month. and the profitability of their practice would more than double, all the other, assumptions being the same. If we maximized the space and schedules and also maximize and added the cash pay service, so, you know, uh, if we were seeing 40 visits a week, we would now, each clinician would be seeing 50 visits a week, and added that cash pay service in, the profitability of that practice would more than would 8x, right? So think about this. If if you look at the column on the right versus the status quo column, which practice is more likely to be able to weather any sort of storm, right? Obviously, the practice on the right that has maximized the physician or the clinician schedules, and also the cash pay, has added the cash pay service in. Which one would be able to negotiate any sort of clinician walking out the door to for a higher salary or higher compensation? The practice on the right. Which one is safer? Would you bet is going to be open 5 years from now? It's the practice on the right. So for those of us that are on the call right now, we want to pay attention to this, because I believe that most of us want to be open 5 years from now, right? So, and there are some options and things that we can do, solutions that we're going to talk about here today. So this online training brought to you by Enovis and Breakthrough. The key thing to know here is we've worked with thousands of practices all over North America, 11 countries internationally outside the US, practices in all 50 states. And the other thing that we have a lot of is data specific to marketing and attracting patients in for our services. And also, Mark Callanen is here with Enovis. Mark's been a good friend to private practices everywhere. I've known Mark since 2017. And Mark, if you can take it away and talk about all the great things that you're doing with Enovis and your experience there.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I mean, I think the thing that I should point out is, to that last slide that Chad was mentioning, is that to be successful on a cash modality or any kind of project, having an experienced voice in the space to help guide you and give you some pearls is usually very helpful. And we've been working with Breakthrough off and on. When I was with LightForce, we were acquired by now Enovis, which used to be DGO Global, in 2020. We became part of a much bigger ship, and very stable platform. Obviously, we're a company that has a market cap of over 1.6 billion. We have many divisions. So we have surgical divisions, foot and ankle. DGO bracing is probably our most notable one. You see it on TV every time you watch a football game. All those gentlemen out there with their knee braces and such, those are our products. So we're a super stable company. LightForce Lasers is the product that you're probably most familiar with if you're in the Breakthrough community. But we have the ability now to have an arm's length reach to a lot of different products that can help your practice out. From a cash standpoint, laser and the lesser known Shockwave products, they both have the ability to fit into a cash model, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the thing that's been great, and I think Chad's going to mention it in a little bit more detail, is the partnership that we've created recently. We really kind of started noodling on this over a year ago, and we're like, hey, we have all this knowledge that we get from our customers when we're talking to them on the install process, and how to help people that are buying our products get better. And Breakthrough's been great at helping different private practices for years, and getting people in the door and helping their practices. And we've kind of had programs that have been closely related, and there's been some funnels and things that we've done together. But we decided, hey, why not really formalize this and make this a really consolidated package to make it even easier for our customers to be successful. So I'm going to be excited about getting into that a little bit later. But yeah, we couldn't be more excited about getting closer to this process and helping out private practice.
Thanks, Mark. All right. So talked with Mark quite a bit about this, and he talked about the synergy of helping to solve this problem. So at Breakthrough, when we're talking with owners, and what we help owners with primarily is marketing their practice, increasing the demand for their services. And in talking with Mark over the years, and providing a product, what were the biggest barriers in terms of rolling out a cash pay service? This is what the three biggest ones that we hear consistently, and Mark, if you can comment on this then. But number one is we assume that, so here's what typically happens, at least in my practice. I'm an owner, I'm at an event, I buy, a piece of equipment. In this case, I invested in LightForce laser, a 40-watt unit. I think initially it was a 25-watt unit years ago. I bring it back to my practice, and I assume that just every patient is going to want it, immediately, and that's not real. We're going to talk about how to solve that and mitigate that. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to look at practices that have rolled this out really, really well. The second thing, the other biggest barrier, is inconsistent marketing or no marketing. So there are three main ways that we can market, and we'll cover that here in a second, but we can go to our past patient list and do promotions. We'll talk about solutions for that. We can go to cold traffic, people who don't even know, like, and trust us, don't know our practice yet, and market and differentiate ourselves to cold traffic. And the third thing that we can do, and this is probably the most overlooked, but yet the most important, is we can just simply make it part of our patient flow process, where we're making recommendations, we're doing trials, we're doing things along those lines, and making it part of normal patient care. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And the third biggest barrier, here we say lack of incorporation into your practice, which it's really getting your clinical team on board and getting reality with getting their own experience with equipment. And for us, again, we'll talk about this more, but in 2017, I was at an event in San Diego. At that event, I had shoulder and neck issues from being on the plane. I think I fell asleep in an awkward position, if I remember correctly. Was treated with LightForce laser, instant relief, better mobility. I became a believer right away, right? So then I'm excited. I bring the unit back to my clinicians, and we're primarily a manual therapy clinic, and everybody else in the room did not have my experience. So we really turned the table, and I'll share that story in a second about how we did that and got over that initial inertia. Anything on this, Mark, in terms of common barriers?
Well, I think about like the marketing message of point number two, and it makes me think of one of my favorite jokes. There was a rookie salesperson that was hired first day on the job, and his manager walks behind him, and he's got his feet up on the desk and is reading a magazine. The sales manager asks him, he says, well, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "How come you're not on the phones?" And he looks over to the sales manager. He goes, "Well, nobody's called yet." So, I think sometimes people think that all the patients are just going to float in because you've made a decision to invest in something. And obviously, in the case of technology, you got to announce it to your community. You got to let them know what you got, how you're different from your peers and the neighboring clinics. And it is a great differentiator to have some of this tech, because it can change pain very quickly. And that's the thing that most people don't understand about these things. They think about them modalities like, it helps out. These devices that we'll be talking about, today, they can change pain in minutes. And so the connect the dots for the patient and the value proposition goes through the roof when they're showing up at your door saying, "Hey, I'm hurting. Can you help me?" And then in addition to all the other great things you do with your plans of care, you add something that can help change pain very quickly. It can shift the discussion very quickly. So to Chad's point about having a staff of manual therapists, they all feel, as we've all heard, that their hands have been touched by God, and nothing can replace their great hands and services. And certainly they do great things. But at the end of the day, having a tool that's going to change how people work with their plans of care and how they work with their patients, it takes time. Changing habits and things that have been established over years is not easy. So there are some tips that we're going to share with you on, how that you can standardize some of this implementation into the patient population in your clinic. Because without that, we've just seen over the years, that's one of the big holes where people might fall flat, is that they leave it up to their staff to decide, hey, you decide if the patient needs this or not. Your staff's not really comfortable with how to talk about it or how to use it, and they're just a little uncomfortable. And the result is they just don't, use it or want to talk about it. So the good thing is that we've seen this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We know where some of these holes are. So, with this process that we're developing and the tools that you're going to have at your disposal, with the breakthrough products and with the training that you'll get from us, it helps really narrow down those black holes.
Thanks, Mark. So let's talk about how to solve and overcome those barriers. And again, this comes from data looking at practices that have done this the best. Number one is consistently market to your past patients, and your patient list. It's commonly overlooked in our industries within conservative healthcare, but it's your lowest cost, easiest to use tool. The people are the warmest. They already know, like, and trust you, and literally you can generate dozens of plans of care from a single email campaign. So this doesn't have to be complex or overly complicated, and it pairs well with adding cash services, in terms of promoting to your past patient list. So when you add a new service like Shockwave or like LightForce or the decompression, what that does is you can also use that to reactivate patients. So yeah, and we'll show you exactly how to do that here, and we'll talk specifically bottom right corner of your screen, results from one practice. We'll get to that here in a second with Tom at Bryn Mawr. So how to do this, and if you're taking notes, this is what you want to write down here. So number one is you should decide on a cadence that works. I can tell you from, again, working with thousands of private practices, most clinicians err on not doing it frequent enough. So, if you're sending out an email once a quarter or once every 6 months or whenever you think about it, that's probably not nearly enough to keep your email list, your contact list warm. And, we worked with some practices that have actually emailed their list twice a week. And, there's no comparison between the two. If as long as you're delivering value and making offers to your list and keeping that in balance, you can email your patient list quite frequently. Those people that are on your list, again, they know, like, and trust you. And when done the right way, they're going to be reactivated, and your word of mouth referrals will increase as well. Always offer value. We have worked with some owners that have sidestepped that part, so not delivering value to their list, and they've only done offers. What that does is burn out the list. On the other end, what most of us do by habit is we only do goodwill and never make an offer. So there's a right way to do that, which is goodwill first and then make the offer for those that interact. But you always want to have and lead with some value there and make sure that's balanced. The other way I've seen that taught is three emails of good value for one email that is an offer. Personalize the subject line. You want to use automation as much as possible. So if you're having 1,000 emails go out, you can always just input the patient's first name in the subject line, and that's been shown to get a significantly better response also. So what kind of campaigns are working today? Direct offers leading to a built-in landing page. A landing page is, if you're here right now, you likely went to a landing page where, you signed up for this online training, this webinar, and, you read what the training was about, what we were going to cover, and then you entered your name and email address in to register for the webinar. That's a landing page. You can use that same exact idea with your patient list. And the most common things that are working really well right now are free laser consultation, or I've seen it written as a laser assessment or laser trial, and then also an open house invitation, which is an event that LightForce and Enovis and really Mark have been running for years. Yeah, Mark, anything you can say on the open house?
Yeah, I just, I saw a comment that splashed up there about, being disinterested in offering a free consult. The understanding that you're trying to do here is get awareness, get somebody in front of you that you can start a conversation with them that you otherwise aren't having. So, don't think about you're giving services away. You're opening up the door to start providing services. And, the open house is a tool that we have used historically to basically talk to your base. Come on back in. I know you've got a chronic problem that, we got 80% better, or you're still managing that OA in your knee, or you're still managing that chronic pain in your neck. Hey, we got a new tool that might be able to help you get, to the next level and function. So come on down and check it out. And I just want to show you what it's about and talk to you about it. it's not uncommon when you do this. You start that conversation, you treat somebody that it's going to turn in and saying, hey, that really helped. I like that because it's going to change pain in most cases on the spot. They're going to see something different in what they're feeling. And it's going to result in them saying, hey, well, I'm interested in investing in a trial of this for, 6 visits, 8 visits, at whatever price you want to set for that. The other thing that happens is that they may just say, after you've done a quick screen or you've done the treatment, you've talked to them, you might do 2 or 3 quick checks and say, hey, you have a handful of segments that aren't moving real well. This is different than what I saw when we discharged you 6 months ago or a year ago. Has your neck been hurting more? Actually, it has. I just haven't, paid any attention to it. And now all of a sudden you have a conversation about how your manual techniques and your exercises are going to play into getting them back to feeling better in addition to this. And all of a sudden they're now a regular plan of care again, starting for another 6, 8, 10 visits for you. So think of it as these are tools that you'll have at your disposal to start conversations again. And if you look at it that way, in addition to have tools to help people feel better and get tissue to improve, it's not just it's a smoke and mirror show. This is actually something that's going to help tissue get better, but it's also going to just give you the ability to have different avenues of discussions. And that's part of the reason why we've started these campaigns with Breakthrough, is because they're the experts at helping introduce some of these questions and outreach concepts to patients, both new and old, that will get those conversations started for you.
Mark, and this is unscripted, so I apologize in advance for asking this. Off the top of your head, what's the record that in terms of sales at somebody's first open house?
Yeah, it's a number that's kind of nuts, and they don't like us to talk about sensational things, but I mean, it's not uncommon to see thousands of dollars generated at an open house event. But I think the record that I saw personally was with a chiropractic clinic in the Midwest. They were very organized and they made it a very, very structured event and got lots of participation, and they cleared over 11 grand that day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I was thinking I had somebody that was at 14, but yeah, it's somewhere in the ballpark. I mean, at least 5 figures.
yeah.
Awesome.
So, and that's not the norm, but it's possible if you dot all your I's and cross all your T's and do it properly. And the nice thing is, we know what they did to make that go well, so we can share that with you down the road.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that. So the second thing that you can do is a big promotional, usually an event as well. We run these 1 to 2 times per year. What it does is it really increases the awareness of the cash pay services, the treatment technologies that you're offering, and drives interest, increased demand for your service amongst your patient list. And you can also do it with cold traffic simultaneously. What we have done in the past is we will time these promotions immediately before our slowest seasons. For example, I'm in the Northeast, where our practice is at, and where I'm at here today. So in the Northeast, between Thanksgiving and the holiday season and the end of the year is traditionally our slowest season, and it gets pretty anemic at times. So what we'll do is this year, I believe it's November 6th or November 7th. It's at Election Tuesday. We are running one of our big promotional events. We will open up that Tuesday. We'll fill up that day with appointments and reactivation appointments, but we're also advertising it in many of our clinics to the general public as well. And we'll fill up that day. Again, it's promotional.
And I should point out too that, like, for the open houses that LightForce has run over the years, we had a recipe, that usually involved a lot of personal phone calls from your front desk, with outreach campaigns that worked well. And we have that recipe down, and they're very effective, and it will work. But it's labor intensive. The thing that you will have at your disposal now, if you were to be a Breakthrough customer, in addition to having our equipment, there's now going to be tools and portals that you could run an open house literally with 2 clicks of your mouse and get it, where they're going to basically be hitting a landing page and filling up your roster to run one of these things. So the ability to generate interest and revenue and people that are going to be in to want to hear about this now is so much easier than what it's ever been. So we don't have a lot of data on that because this portal is relatively new, but combining what we know is tried and true with these new fancier tactics that Breakthrough has to get people to commit to coming on in, it should be really fabulous.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And just as and thank you for that, Mark. Just as an example, so the day, well, I talked about November 7th. This year, we're celebrating 20 years in practice, our 20-year birthday. We'll open up that day at all 7 of our clinics. And off the top of my head, I think we have 250 appointments available on those days. You can run them as free screens, free assessments, whatever you're comfortable with and your business acumen in terms of ethics, compliance, sticking with your practice act, all the disclaimers, et cetera. Um, I know people that will do risk-free assessments and things along those lines, but nonetheless, this will carry us. We will create enough of a waiting list that it will carry us through the end of the year, and we'll keep our schedules full rather than have that proverbial dip and actually go into the negative here in terms of profitability. So it helps us keep our schedules full, and now we have an additional tool as well in terms of offering the cash pay services. Third thing you want to do here is incorporate the treatment technology into your practice. Lots of notes that you can take here. I will tell you this. So a few things in the rollout that worked really well for us, and I've heard other owners share the same. One is I was really excited when we came back and we first got, and by the way, LightForce, Enovis, they do a fantastic job, an amazing job of training the team. We offer, all of our therapists are certified orthopedic manual therapists, and we have clinicians who are published and everything else. And there was a lot of resistance in the beginning. When we started treating each other for whatever real problems that we had, the affinity for the treatment technology increased immensely because now they felt the result and it was an immediate change that they could go forward with the patient and have more confidence, more conviction in the treatments that they were recommending. So that was one key. The other one is what we've seen in the best clinics is incorporating it into their patient flow. So treatment number one, the eval and that first treatment, they won't offer any sort of recommendation or introducing the technology. And then the next treatment number two, they'll receive a trial, or again, you're going to want to make sure you're compliant with the nomenclature there. That's the most common thing that I've seen past legal and compliances will give you a trial of this treatment technology. And then on the third visit, simply ask, you've had treatment with, in the example, I'll use LightForce. So with the laser, you've had treatment without the laser, you've had treatment with the laser, which one do you prefer? And the patient is typically going to say, well, I prefer treatment with the laser. Okay, here are the packages that we offer. There's usually a good, better, best type package. And Mark can speak on that here in a second in terms of what he's seeing. And then here's my recommendation as the clinician. I believe you need 6 treatments, 10 treatments, 20 treatments, whatever that might be. And then the patient literally purchases a cash pay service right there. Any comments on that, Mark?
Yeah, lots of things triggering off my head when you mentioned some of those things. But I mean, the thing that we have to remind clinicians all the time is why are people sitting in your waiting room? And the reason that they're sitting there is they're in pain. And they're there hoping that you guys have the magic solution to get them feeling better, moving better, getting back to whatever they want to get to do. So the more tools you have that can basically check that box and get them out of pain and get them feeling better quickly, you are gaining traction. Because if you're not doing that, say you had a staff of young therapists that didn't have great hands and they weren't able to move the needle quickly on getting people feeling better, moving better, getting their pain scores down, what happens to those patient lists? The cancellation rates go through the roof. And that's an expensive problem to have. So if you have some tools that can support even your younger therapists to help them, basically dot the I on and cross the T on getting people feeling better quickly, it will just make everything else they do easier. But there's bias involved that you have to overcome. You have to have education, and support and literature. We have all these things, and we've seen every objection there is, from every type of staff and clinician member. And chances are, if you were to roll it out in your clinic and say you had 5 or 6 therapists, you're going to have one person, you could probably think of them right now, that is going to pull out the research books and say, I don't see enough evidence, prove it to me. we can help you with that. Okay. And there's over 10,000 published papers on laser, so it's not that there's a scarcity out there. It's just they're probably not looking in the right spots. But whether it's research or how to incorporate it, the key is that, you understand where these pressure points are with your staff, so that you can move them forward. The other classic one is I'm not a salesperson. I didn't get into therapy to be a salesperson. And if you listen to what Chad just outlined, did that sound like a sales pitch? No, it was just, hey, I'm providing a service. You tell me if you think it helps you or not. And if the answer is, yeah, I think it helped, then it becomes a pretty easy conversation. So just rest assured for people that are a little reticent, or they're going, oh my gosh, there's no way that my staff is going to be able to digest all of this. We've done it before. We've done it a lot, and we can help you with that whole process. And I think that's where Breakthrough and LightForce, now part of the Chattanooga team, we've been successful over the years, is that we don't just sell you guys a product, or Breakthrough doesn't just sell you software and go, hey, good luck, hope it works. We are very hands-on, fingers are in the bowl. We're going to make sure that, it's working, you're getting success, because if you're not, we're dying, so, our lifeblood is that, we're selling to happy customers and they can tell a friend, and so on and so on. I think that was the old pitch, right? But the key is that we want to be as involved as we need to be to make your program successful. And, we have a pretty good track record to prove that out.
Yep. So, two owners, so think about this, if you're at a crossroads, which I was a few years ago, and, where do I go for profitability? Lots of things that I could be doing, 100 different things. How do I prioritize here? Well, think about it like this. If we were to meet again 3 years from now, and let's say you were giving me advice, and advice number one is I don't add a cash pay service. I stay dependent fully on insurance companies and the patient responsibility as well as part of the visit, but I'm limited to $85, $90, $95 a visit. And we see where the trends are headed over the last 30 years. I don't think they're radically going to change anytime soon. I don't think inflation's going away. I don't think that increased pressure on costs are going up, but I don't make a change, right? I have paralysis of analysis, and I decide not to do anything at all. And owner number two is, or another version of me is, you advise me to add a cash pay service because you've seen it work for other owners, or you've done it yourself and you've seen the success. And I decide to add that in, and let's say we'll keep it modest, but we get a 10% bump across the board in our revenue. So with and I'll do some quick math here for you right now. So roughly, we're doing about $9 million a year in revenue in our 7 locations, and we're able to add $900,000 a year, which to me that goes nearly 100% to our bottom line, and we're able to keep our doors open. So just think through having a discussion with me. In the first scenario, if I don't make a change, how am I going to sound to you? I'm probably going to be making excuses about, this is what happened with Medicare. This is unfair. This is what the Fed did in terms of inflation. And, this is unfair. And let me explain to you all the reasons that I'm failing. On the second one, I'm probably talking with you about how we're serving a lot of people, how we have an amazing team. We're able to gainfully employ many team members who are making a huge impact in our area. We're helping people come off of pain or avoid pain medications and avoid surgeries, and we're opening other clinics, and we have great programs going, right? So in my position here at Breakthrough over the last 10 years and working directly with private practice owners, I've seen owners in both scenarios. And really what this is about is, helping you make that decision as well and becoming the owner that you want to be. So, Practice A, lots of examples here. So Practice A generates $15,000 added revenue in the first month and $20,000 or $200,000 within the first year. Practice B, or my negative Nelly cell, generates little to no added revenue and continues to struggle with profitability. What did they do differently? One is, here's what other owners are doing that are successful. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to adapt and implement and execute on what they've adapted. So, who incorporates a plan for incorporating the tech, and the other one doesn't create a plan and just leaves it in the corner, right? We both know owners that have done those two things differently. The nice thing now is, especially with the program that Mark has worked so diligently on putting together for owners, is we have more and more owners that are incorporating the treatment technology into their practice right away. Which owner gets technical and marketing training for their staff and gets their team on board. The other one, doesn't reach out for any, or, gets no support. Enable staff to sell versus doesn't want staff selling, right? Like, how are you going to handle that initial conversation? We can help you out personally, overcome that. Host an open house in the first month versus does no marketing. Consistently markets to past patients versus no plan to communicate with past patients as well. So, again,
if I can add, Chad, just to another thing about that is, like, he's talking about, hey, all the things that Breakthrough can do to help out. But I've already seen it on the chat, features here. There's lots of feedback going from people that have our devices and that are giving feedback from their own experience. When you join Breakthrough, you become part of that community, and there's different platforms where you can ask questions and get information from your peers and other clinics. What's worked, what hasn't worked. Hey, is that clinic similar to my clinic? You can get some very apples to apples comparisons and get some win stories that you think you might be having trouble with. That all sort of comes along, as part of this package. So that's no little thing, because as private practice is, one of the hard things is you're struggling to get information. You're not part of a big network that has, data teams or marketing teams that can get you information you're looking for. You need to get it, any way you can, and beg, borrow, and steal. This is a network opportunity that'll really help you with that.
Great point, Mark. Yep. So as Mark alluded to before, we have a new program for practice owners specifically designed to generate more cash-based revenue. Lots of experience here. So Enovis and Breakthrough have joined forces, and let's talk about exactly what is in it for the practice owner. So you'll be able to, easily and effectively increase your profitability, generate more cash revenue, and do it more quickly. Attract patients who are willing to pay cash. Differentiate your practice from other competitors in your area. Stay top of mind with past patients. Confidently, market and sell cash services and help your clinicians to do the same. And also, more importantly, for the patient, most importantly, is helping them improve their outcomes, get better faster. So, along the lines of the biggest barriers and solving those problems for you, we have done for you marketing campaigns for shockwave, attraction device, and also laser, those treatment technologies, monthly reactivation campaigns for your patient list, pre-built templates for evergreen advertising campaigns, regardless of the platform that you're using, marketing and sales training for your team. I've personally been through that. I know in the clinic that I'm in right now, all of our clinicians are certified with Enovis in terms of the LightForce treatment technology, and that was an awesome experience for us to go through. The support is top-notch, world-class, and then ROI insights and reporting to help you make more and better decisions moving forward in your marketing. So a couple of quick wins here. This is Tony Sear. You've likely have seen stories about Tony. He was, I believe, Practice Owner of the Year here at Breakthrough in 2019 or 2020. Tony he and his wife Melissa are the owners, founders of Kinetics PT in Florida. And in 1 year, in 2022, they had $300,000 total in cash pay revenue from their cash services. And just to give you an idea, Tony's right around $3 million a year, and they just opened up their second clinic. So really excited for Tony. And then also, I had mentioned this earlier, Tom and Bryn Mawr Sports Therapy, Tom Lloyd, what they did is, with a single email campaign that we're referring to here within Breakthrough, they had 34 laser trials from one email campaign and sold 25 laser packages.
I think it's worth pointing out too is that, with COVID and what we experienced, there's this big push where everybody went home, and hey, we're going to get services at home in our safe four walls. And thank God we're crawling out from that. But Chad had a great story, because he got hit like everybody else, with volume hits. The people that first came back, into the clinic to sort of test the waters, what he shared with me were his laser customers, people that like, hey, that's a service that's helped me. There was value to it. I can't do it at home, so I'm willing to go back into the clinic, to get that service. Do you want to give any color to that, Chad?
Yeah, they're more invested and more committed. Uh, that was my take of talking with patients who came back earlier, came back more often, were less fearful. They were more bought into their own healing process. So, yeah, completely agree with you there, Mark.
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. It's like if you're offering services that they just can't get other places, or they can't get at home or buy off of Amazon, that's a value. They're going to, hey, I have to go see my favorite therapy place because they have the technology that has worked for me in the past. It's just another plus in your column.
Yep. So we offer pre-built campaigns for laser and shockwave. We have an exclusive reactivation campaign working with Enovis and for Enovis clients. Cold market campaigns. These are going out to people who don't know, like, and trust you yet for all the treatment technologies and the open house, and then meta advertising templates, metas for Facebook and Instagram specifically. And we have training on how to increase profitability with cash pay service. This comes from best practices in today's market, how to market your cash services, how to package and sell them, primarily for your clinicians, and how to make it part of your organizational flow, operationalize it into your practice. And we deliver the training with online video, step-by-step instructions the whole way through, so you and your team can go through and go through the training as many times as you need to. Frequent small group calls, I lead those. I have another one here coming up right after this call. And then all the templates that we're using in private practice, you get access to that as well. So, Mark, you want to go through the laser shockwave cash ROI here?
Yeah. So this is just to give you a sense of some scope and scale to sort of fit your practice. So if you look across those lines, you have a small practice, 2 treaters, medium practice, 4, large practice, 8, and then some volumes that would be, relative to those. So if you look at the new eval number, that's another way to gauge your practice. So, if you look at that medium line of, 60 new evals a month, what we did is, across the columns here in the blue, are different adoption rates of saying, yeah, I want to get a laser package, or I want to get a shockwave package. So if you had 10% of your new patients essentially saying, yeah, I want to do that, put their hand up. So if you had 60 new evals, that would be 6 patients. Average package price, I've seen those questions going back and forth. It's about $50 a treatment across the country. It can be up or down a little bit, but that's pretty much middle of the road on where it's been. So 6 visits is the middle of the road number of visits that most people are going to get. So that's $300 a package. So that's the assumption. So if you did that, 6 patients are going to bring in $1,800 a month, or 21,000, a year. So not, stupendous, but it's a number that's going to help your practice. But if you get that number up to about 30%, so if you get 18 out of those 60 patients to put their hand up and say, yeah, I want to do that, through having a really solid process we were talking about earlier, about introducing it to all your patients, and allowing it to really get it integrated into your practice. Now you're talking about a number that's like $5,400 a month and could generate, over $64,000 a year. So that starts to become a real number. And I would say, for our clinics that are really doing well, they're in that 20 to 25% range. If you're operating at 30%, you're killing it. 50% would be a moonshot, in all, fair disclosure. But I mean, you can see, because one of the objections we always hear is, well, all my patients won't want to do it. That's fine. They don't all need to do it for you to be successful. If you talk to any of these clinics, that are using it, that are happy with it and helping them on their bottom line, they don't have 100% adoption by every one of their patients to do it. But yeah, that's basically how this breaks down. So it comes down to the key is to have a consistent process to introduce the technology to your patients. And if you do that, then these numbers start to become very feasible for you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go with the medium-sized practice. So somewhere just north of 10% adoption would be more than enough to make up for the upcoming Medicare cuts. Just throwing that out there, because I know many of us are trying to solve that problem.
And I think I'll just add this too, because I've seen about 8 questions pop up on this. It's like, so we talked about average cost, $50. Basically, a treatment takes about as long as an ultrasound treatment with our high power equipment. That's part of our secret sauce, is the higher power, you can deliver the energy needed very quickly. So hands-on time of applying it's going to be probably around 5 minutes or so for most problems. But if you count the setup and the discharge and the scheduling, all that, if you're scheduling people on the 15 minutes, that's completely appropriate. But for those people that are incorporating it into your visit for the day, you're going to be charging for your units, 8-minute rule. I mean, you're going to get through 53, 55 minutes of treatment. That's going to cover you for your 4 units. If you wanted to add this in that last 5 minutes as a service for cash, that's how it sort of can fit. That's how one model is. There's other people that just have their own laser schedule and they have a dedicated person that runs that. So people that can jump in and out of their visit. There's a handful of ways you can do it. So just to hopefully answer some of those questions that I've been seeing pop up.
Yeah, Mark, we were running an implementation call last week, and there was a practice owner on there, Jeff, and he had talked about, he said that, the unit economics don't really make sense. And I walked him through this exercise, and I think what we got to is he's seeing basically 2 patients an hour, and the revenue generated is around $140. Going even more conservative than what you said with, I think we did a 15-minute time block for laser, and taking the average of the owners that were on the call that sold cash pay. I think it was $50 for a single treatment, so that would generate $200 an hour. And I just simply said, Jeff, what do you want to do? $200 an hour or 140? And he was like, well, that's a no-brainer. And so breaking it down on a hourly revenue or a weekly revenue definitely helps make it more clear. And also realize you have significantly less overhead in collecting $50 in cash from a patient than you do going, having a billing company or paying a biller to go get $83 from an insurance company. So we have the program. Who is this for? It's for practice owners who want to increase profitability. You're selling cash services already, or you're looking to add cash services. You have a growth mindset and you're willing to be highly engaged. This really isn't for, so at Breakthrough, we don't work with hops or pops practices in terms of the marketing. If you can't commit to change, this isn't for you, or if you're not willing to invest in your practice. So we have a blueprint for patient demand success and increasing demand for your services. It does all these things, and it's everything that we already covered in terms of marketing to your past patient list, with everything pre-built, marketing to cold traffic as well, and also the education, how to implement this into your patient flow. For those of you that are interested learning more about, obviously we can't cover everything here in an hour for you, and I want to make sure that we have time for the Q&A, but if you're interested in learning more about how you can increase profitability with cash-based services, there's a poll showing up on your screen, and you can answer, yes, I'd like to learn more about Breakthrough's marketing solutions to increase revenue from cash-based services. Yes, I'd like to learn more about Enovis devices such as LightForce Laser and Focus Shockwave. So what you can do is just click those. We'll give it another couple seconds here.
And for those of you that I've seen some questions about which one's better, laser, shockwave. My day job is to help explain how all this stuff works. So if you guys want some more information, just put your information in so that we can reach out to you, or I can start a conversation with you and help guide you through that. Happy to do that.
Thanks. And when you click yes, somebody from the Breakthrough or Enovis team will reach out with you and answer all of your questions, and help get you all the education that you need to make the best decision for your practice. And then, Andrea, we can open that up for Q&A. Any questions that you have for Mark or I?
Great. Thank you so much, Chad and Mark. We have quite a few questions. So you guys let me know how much time you have yeah, if we need to cut it off at some point, we can definitely answer these questions in a one-on-one call as well. But I'll start rolling through them. So this might have been answered, so let me know if so, but I know we saw a lot of questions about what are people charging per treatment and how should practice owners think about this?
Yeah, I think about $50 is the national average. If you're practicing in New York City, it's probably going to be 75. And then if you're in a more rural setting, it could be, as low as 30. But, I would just tell you it's one of those false flags that's up there is that, hey, my patients can't afford this. And all I would tell you is, set your course based on what you're going to hear from your peers and what we advise on your pricing structure, and then follow the steps and go forward. Because pain's a very personal story, and you don't know who's sitting in front of you. The analogy I give is if you were sitting in front of your clinic and you saw three people that had the exact same income, do you think they would all drive the same car? And the answer is no. And quite frankly, pain's the same way. You don't know what people's experiences. There's people that, can deal with something for years before they come see you. There's people that, have a hangnail and they're going to come in and see you the next day because they can't stand pain. And then you have people that maybe have a history with some, opioid issues, or, they don't want to touch a pill for whatever reason in their family history. And they're looking for things that are non-invasive, non-pharmacological that can help them with their pain. And all of a sudden you're coming to them with that solution. Their ears perk right up. So don't have your staff prejudge who's a good candidate, who's a not, because you're going to be surprised. And we've had several, and Jack can probably speak to it from his membership. I mean, there's been many, many, many clinics that have practices that aren't in super affluent places. One of the best open houses I sat was in a clinic outside of Poughkeepsie. A lot of farmland, wasn't something that was, metropolis in any way. And the gentleman generated $7,000 on that open house because he had unbelievable connection with his patients. He had a great strategy and was very organized, and he just knocked it out. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on the charge per visit.
Thanks, Mark. On that open house, are there any other specific ingredients or things you would recommend people do in order for it to be a success?
Chad, you want to talk about what's worked well for your clinic?
Yeah, promote it everywhere. So promote it via email, promote it via text, direct mail, flyers in the clinic, have a very specific offer. Again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. All the materials are designed already for you. Just click send is really what you need to do. So we use multimedia. It's going to be posted on Facebook and Instagram and all the platforms that we're on. Just make it be known what you're doing, what the benefit is for everybody in the room, that they're going to be receiving education, get exposure to learn about new treatments available to them. And here's the benefits of what it does. That's exactly what all the promotional materials do, and just get it on every platform possible.
And having the breakthrough tool to promote your open houses like a jet airliner, for a prop plane, we had front desk calling people from past patients, or having the therapist reach out and personally invite 3 to 5 patients to come to the event. So basically just going after your existing list essentially and bringing back favorite patients to show this stuff works unbelievably, just because the personal connection is there. And, the fact you're having a conversation with them to invite them and say, hey, I thought about you personally, has worked unbelievably in the past too. So it just takes a lot more of a lift than it does to be able to use the automated tools that Breakthrough is going to present you with.
Awesome. Thank you. Joanne asks, how long is your treatment session? Would you do any treatments on the same day? Oh, any other treatments on the same day as you're doing laser treatments?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a piece of the equation. It's a tool. It's not the whole treatment in most cases. So you're going to incorporate it with all the different things you're doing with exercise and manual therapies to get, tissue moving, get range of motion restored. It's just going to help that process. So you can imagine, for all of you that are trying to mobile on semi-acute or acute problems that have a lot of guarding, muscle splinting, things of that nature, you have to spend most of your time getting that soft tissue to adjust so that you can then get some range and get some segmental mobility through it with your approach. The laser just makes that easier because you're going to basically address it. Shockwave has a way to do it as well, where you can do it and all of a sudden that soft tissue within a couple of minutes changes. so that instead of it being as guarded and tight, it's going to relax, which is going to allow you to then go in there and do the different manual things you need. So yeah, it's definitely something that works best when it's incorporated.
Awesome. And can you share the length of treatment, like for a single session?
It boils down to area. So when you get technical about it, there's certain dosing that's required for different depths of tissue and the type of tissue you're trying to address. So if you're trying to treat somebody's, finger, the treatment could take 30 seconds. If you're treating a low back on a guy that weighs 300 pounds, that treatment might take 6 or 7 minutes. So it just comes down to how big of an area you're trying to address and a couple of specifics. But generally, middle of the road, you're going to be, hands on that person for probably about 5 minutes for that treatment.
Awesome. John asked, this is one of our pre-submitted questions. He said, I would like to know what approaches work best to get buy-in from PT staff to sell the program to active patients.
Number one is create awareness. So here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Literally with my own team here internally. I just did a video. I went to CMS. I showed them the Medicare conversion factor since 94. There's a table that's published. I showed them what inflation looks like. And I literally sent that out to the whole company, more than 100 team members. So here's the battle that we're facing. Here's what we can do about it. So really justify the why, the awareness in the beginning. For clinicians, if you hit a barrier where clinicians are resistant to it, get it in their hands. So literally in a staff meeting, we just said, who has pain right now? And this is when I sensed some reluctance. We had a receptionist named Deb. So Deb, what's going on? Heel pain, 7 out of 10. She was actually in treatment currently at our clinic for this heel pain. So 7 out of 10 right now as I'm standing here. We went into the room, did less than a 5-minute treatment. She came out. She was like, wow, that really does work. And I said, where are you at now? She said a 2 out of 10. So instantly, everybody that was there, that we increased their awareness for the treatment technology in terms of what it can do. Then we started to get more questions. Well, what research is on? All you have to do is Google the research. I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's not hard. It's not like when Mark and I went to college and we had to go through, the Dewey Decimal System
Or catalogs.
Yeah, to figure out research. Like completely different, right? So there are search engines now. It's very easy to find the research, and then but creating that awareness, getting it in the therapist's hands, having them treat each other and treat the staff, that was key for us in terms of.
I think the other thing too is, there's a host of little tricks like, Paul's bringing up about before and after testing, just like you would with any manual technique. Hey, your range was 30 degrees before I did my manipulation. Hey, I just treated you. You were 30. Now you're 50. That's all part of how to handle that conversation. It's huge. But to the question to staff adoption, I've found what's important is that from an owner standpoint, a lot of times people want to be very democratic and get everybody's vote and, try to balance it out. At a certain point, there has to be an ownership message that, hey, I'm investing in this technology because I believe in it. I've seen enough that it works. I've talked to, many different peers and clinics that say, hey, this is something that's helped patients and it's been successful. And we're going to do it. And by doing that, one owner, an older breakthrough member from years ago, she had a great message. She had a clinic up in Boston, Stacy. I'm sure Chad knows what I'm talking about. But her message to the staff when they had some changes going on that were significant because they had some ownership changes and such, and she was going to change how they were doing practice based on some of the breakthrough principles. She said, hey, the bus is pulling out, so either get on or get out, and it was a very clear message that was like, I'm not going to deviate from this direction I'm talking to you about today. So if you really, really are opposed to what I'm saying, then maybe this isn't going to be a great fit for you. And I'm not saying you have to get hardlined with everybody. And, we all know how hard it is to get staff, but at the same time, it is important that you let the staff know that, hey, this is a significant investment, significant, change in course for the clinic. If you're not doing any cash pay, now you're going to start to do it. And that, let's get on board. We're going to give you all the support you could possibly want to do it. But saying no isn't really going to be a great option. What do you think about that, Chad?
I think Dion just copied Stacy.
Tell her we love her. Think of her frequently.
Yeah, she also has the highest I believe she's at $80 a visit for the is the highest that I know. So yeah, definitely poured a lot into rolling it out with her team and serving the community. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep rolling through a few more questions. Tom said that his patients expect their insurance to pay. How should he handle this conception with patients when we're asking them to pay cash and they're expecting their insurance to cover the costs?
This isn't covered by insurance. How do you want to handle it?
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is we're not where we were 5 years ago. The amount of cash pay add-ons now are significantly different. And the example I love to give is when you go see your dentist, think about the last time you're sitting in the chair. Did you pay for anything like an extra fluoride treatment, teeth whitening, some type of nitric oxide to make the experience a little bit more comfortable if you're anxious? Those aren't covered. They're all cash options, and they're just basically presenting you, the patient, with those options. And if you say no, then they don't get added. But if you'd like it, you say, yeah, I think that would be great, you add it. So this sort of, I don't know if concierge service is the right way to look at it, but sort of like, being able to pick and choose on things you want. That's becoming more in the normal appetite for patients, and they sort of, it's not like a foreign concept when you present them with this, because ultimately all you're doing as the clinician is giving them a great plan of care choice. And if they choose, I can't afford it, I don't want to do it, no problem, you move on. But that's about as complicated as the sales pitch is that you're basically saying, hey, this is something that's going to help you bring pain down and maybe tighten up your plan of care, get you feeling better, get you back to doing what you want to do faster. Is that of interest to you? So if you're talking to a person that has basically been sitting on a couch for 3 weeks and has very little activity, doesn't really care, it's not going to be the same message that if you get a weekend golfer and his favorite thing to do in the week is to go hook up with his foursome and play on Saturday morning at the club. Their level of interest to get better quickly is a whole different story. So understanding your patient's goals, understanding why they're seeing you, and tying that all together, and the overall message will be huge in your success.
Awesome. I'm going to repost the link where people can schedule a call. If you do have additional questions, you can have a one-on-one call and go even deeper into it.
Well, I'd like to thank Chad. Thank everybody for joining us today. It's been a fun conversation. Hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. How about some love for Mark in the chat log?
Yeah, I don't get as much FaceTime as Chad does. So, I gotta appreciate it.
Right on. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Andrea. See you in a week, Mark.
Remember to visit getbreakthrough.com to access our free resource library designed specifically for private practice growth. While you're there, make sure you register for a complimentary growth assessment to learn about potential opportunities for growth in your local market. Again, thank you for tuning into the Grow Your Practice podcast and supporting our mission to help people in pain get back to normal naturally.